Matrix, and welcome to yet another amazing show of Matrix. My name is Looney, and today we'll be assisting you with your exam guide for Maths Lit. As always, I'm never alone. With me are Hayley, as well as our sign language interpreter, Nicolene. Don't forget, guys, we do have some exciting competitions, but I'll give you all of those details later on in the show. Don't forget to hit us up on our Facebook page and all our other social media platforms. Just search for Matrix. Thank you so much, Hayley, and over to you.
Thanks very much. Welcome, Matrix. Today we are going to be looking at paper 1 and exams time prep and what you need to know in order to conquer this exam. So let's go to our first page. Right, the paper 1 and what it actually looks like. So first of all, we've got 150 marks and 3 hours, or 180 minutes. Now I'm going to take a pause right now, and I want to actually show you how to work out how many marks you need to do per minute. So I'm going to look at this as a ratio. I'm going to write it here. So I've got 150 marks in 180 minutes. So I want to know how long I've got. Now I always write my question mark, that's my minutes. How long I've got for 1 mark. So I'm going to work out this as a ratio, and I'm explaining how I do the ratio. I write it out like this. My known is at the top, what I've been given, and then my question mark on the second line. Then I take the number that is above my question mark, which is 180, and I multiply it, and I always multiply it by the second number over the first, so 1 over 150. And I'm going to do that on my calculator, exactly like that. And I'm going to get 180 times by 1 over 150. And I see that I get the answer of 1.2. That means I've got 1.2 minutes per mark. So it's important that when you look at the question paper, when you're reading it during your reading time, that you actually see, well, okay, I've got a paper that's like now I've got 30 marks for question 1, and you can work out, you take that 1.2 times by your 30, and you see that you need 36 minutes to complete that question. And this way you won't run out of time. Okay, there are 5 questions in this paper, and you need to answer absolutely all of the questions. Right, let's see what else there is. In your instructions and information sheet, it's really important that you read through and you read the following instructions. You need to start each question on a new page. Now, your questions are broken down into 5 questions, but there's going to be question 1 and then 1.1, 1.2, etc., etc. Each paper is slightly different, but at the end of question, you need to finish the page, start question 2 on the next page. Important to number your answers and the questions exactly how they are in the question paper. When the marker is marking your paper, they don't want to have to look for what you've actually answered. They want to know that you are answering the correct question. Show all your calculations. I cannot stress how important this is. They need to see every step of your working. They need to know what you were thinking. So if you type it on your calculator, write it in your book. And then finally, round off your final answer in the context that it was given. And I'm going to discuss this a little bit more in our session today. Right. There might be additional documents. So you're going to get your question paper, and you might get an addendum. An addendum will be extra information that you need to answer the questions. The question will tell you to refer to a particular annexure for that question. So your addendum will be made up of different annexures. They normally start and label it A to whatever letter they need. So the question will say, refer to annexure A. You will find it in your addendum. What it might contain is tables. It could contain plans. It could contain maps. It could contain graphs. Anything that you need a little bit more information than the question gives you. There might also be an answer sheet. So sometimes they want you to answer something specific. It might be a grid or a graph. It might be a table. So this comes separate to your answer book that you're completing. Really, really important that you make sure your center number and your exam number are on this piece of paper. So you're going to hand in your question paper and you're going to your answer book, and you're going to hand in these answer sheets, which are like loose pieces of paper. Right. More details of the questions. So question 1 is a short context. There's a variety of contexts, meaning a variety of different stories. And information is given in different ways. So that question 1 is going to more detail. There will be different calculations. You might need to do a calculation involving a percentage. You might need to use ratio. So remember how I explained how to use ratio? I think I'll have an opportunity to show you that again. Conversions of units. There might be data handling, and there might be probability. Question 2, on the other hand, let's change our pen. Question 2, on the other hand, is definitely finance. Now, I always tell my kids that I teach at school, finance is anything to do with money. Anything to do with money. So it's really hard to say what finance could be, but if it's got money in it, finance. You might have different bills, accounts, a tariff system. I'm going to do a tariff system with you today. VAT calculations, really important. And VAT calculation also comes back to our percentage that we discussed that could come up in question 1. Income, expense, profit, loss, could be graphs, could be rounding of numbers. Anything to do with money at all is question 2. Question 3 is our next section, which is our measurement. Now, I know historically this is the kind of question that everybody goes, oh no, I can't do this, but I promise you, you can. Okay? Conversion of units. That will come up under measurement. Calculations, dealing with perimeter, surface area, maybe volume. Those are all different things that would come into our measurement question. These are the kind of things where you'll get pictures of like a garden or a house. Okay. Question 4 is maps and plans. We need to, on a map, first of all, understand how to use a scale of a map. Okay? And really important to remember that a scale is not necessarily only referring to a map. It could actually be a scale of, let me take an ant and make it bigger. That would also be a scale. But scale and understanding that. Identify features on different maps and plans. Identifying the windows of a house. Identifying a main road on a map of South Africa. Then we're going to do calculations which include directions, distance, speed is a very good one. So these are all things that come into question 4. Question 5, finally, the last question that you have is data handling. Here, we gather data from different sources. They will give you data from different sources, and it can be really from absolutely anywhere. And then, finally, we do calculations. We kind of looked at central tendencies. So I'm just quickly going to recap. What are our central tendencies? We've got our averages. We call those, our central tendencies are averages. Can't spell today. Okay? And those include my mean, which is my average. Mean, we add them all up and divide by how many there are. We've got our median. Our median is the middle number. That's got a D. It's the middle number, and they must be in order. And then I actually think I've got more space. No, don't have more space there. And then my mode is my most often occurring. That's got an O for most often occurring. It's important that you know the difference between those 3 words. And then we look at our spread, kind of like our range, which would be our highest minus our lowest number. Okay? What other questions could we expect? We can also represent this data graphically. This is a very important skill. To be able to identify pie charts, be able to work with pie charts, bar graphs, and histograms. And then finally, you would also have probabilities based on data. Probability is one of the sections that you learn through school, but it's not a particular question on its own. It normally comes into one of the other 5 questions that we have in the paper. I just quickly want to show you the difference between these graphs. So first of all, your pie chart, okay? So I'm going to just look at a pie chart, just draw a random pie chart, not the best circle. And just to remember that your pie chart is 100%. Because very often they ask you for a missing piece. Like what percentage is missing? So to remember that a pie chart is made up of 100%. Then the most important, and I'm going to use this in my blue, is the difference between your bar graph and your histogram. And I just want to show you these because they're so easy to get them confused. So your bar graph and your histogram. They're both going to look the same when you look at the graph. You've got your frequency on that axis, and you've got your category down there. Not going to necessarily draw it. Your bar graph, what you need to think about is if we are, and I mean I know most of our homes have got burglar bars. Think about we're sitting at home, we've got burglar bars on our window, but we can see through. So bar graph needs to have spaces between. We can see through the bars. On the other hand, a histogram tells you a history and a story. So it has the word history, and that will be ones that are connected, where your bars are actually connected to each other. So it's a quick, easy way to see what's the difference between a histogram and a bar graph. The other thing you can think about, or you can look at, is your histogram is for continuous data. There's a specific order, and I can't change that order. So what I mean by continuous is you will have something that'll maybe go from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3. Won't change. Maybe that'll be meters of something. Bar graph, on the other hand, I can change the order. So I can decide, actually, if this was blue, blue, can't spell blue. Okay, let's try to erase that. Okay, that was blue, and this was pink. I could decide, well, no, I like pink better. So I'm going to put pink first, because to me it's more important, and I can change the order. And that's a good way to determine the difference between the two. So that takes you through, the introduction to what the paper should be like. And when we come back after the break, I'm going to go through more specifics.
Thank you, Hayley. Guys, we are going to take a very short break, so don't go anywhere. We'll see you straight after this. Welcome back from the break, Matrix. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you've just joined us, we are doing your exam guide to assist you to prep for the upcoming exams. Well, if you're someone who's constantly running out of data, then this competition is just for you. Waza Matrix is bringing you #WazoWinner competition, where 2 lucky Matrix stand a chance to win 2 gigs of data. All you need to do is go to our Facebook page and all the details will be there. Straight to you, Hayley. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Welcome back, Matrix. We're now going to be looking at tips for preparing you for paper 1. Oh, I don't have a pen. So make sure that your summary notes include a list of important terms. Now, if you go to Mind the Gap study guide, they've got all the terms that you need, and it's important that you understand them. It's important that you remember these different terms. And the steps to follow for different calculations. When you use your calculator to perform different types of calculations, you need to know how to do that. You need to practice and identify information from different types of sources. And like text based on information, you need to understand tables, diagrams, maps and plans, graphs. But the most important thing is you actually need to get this from past papers. So go and look at the past papers, and I think there'll be a link for you that you can actually get this information and practice tables, diagrams, maps and plans, and all the things that you need. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to look at a particular question and something that in previous history people have struggled with, and we're going to look at it in more detail. So we're going to analyze, I have a pen, we're going to analyze a municipal account. On this municipal account, we're going to identify the different information that you get within the account. We're going to try and understand how the tariff works, and we're going to remember or remind ourselves how to actually do the VAT calculations. Now, what's really important, guys, is don't get scared by anything that you're given. It might be something that you've never seen before in the exam. You might never have done a municipal account, but if you take it step by step and you don't let it overwhelm you, you actually can conquer a lot. So, this particular example, and then they told you, remember I said earlier you need to remember your Annexure A, so this would have been in your addendum pack. It shows an extract from Mr. Daniel's monthly municipal statement, including the residential water and sewer tariff table. That's what they're giving you. It's really important to understand what you've been given before you actually go and just answer the questions. So, this is the extract from his monthly municipal statement. It gives you his address. It gives you a date and the statement, so we can see the statement was for March. It tells us our stand size. I think I must take away some of this pen. We can see the stand size. So this is the information that we see. Stand size, the number of dwellings. That's how many properties are actually on that property. The date of valuation, the municipal valuation, and the region. This statement carries on. So I'm just going to go through it briefly, but I've actually taken out the important stuff that you need within each question. So it gives you an account number. And then you'll see water and sewer. It gives you your water and sewer. It gives you the date, the meter reading, water usage, how much is being used, the daily average consumption. And then it's giving you a whole lot of charges. We can see we've got subtotals and we've got a total amount, the due date, the amount that's due, and then these are the tables that they talked about. We've got a residential water table, and we've got the sewer monthly charged based on stand size. So look at it, analyze the table, analyze the accounts that you've been given, and then go to the questions. So, first question says, write down the market value in words. So we look at our account, we see where is this market value, and we will see we've got a municipal valuation. Now that is our market value. If we're struggling with the words, we've got value there and value there. Oh, shouldn't have cussed out the whole thing. Let's take that away. And you can see that that's your value. So we're looking at, and they tell you there, the market value. We're looking at that number and we want to write it into words. Now, writing a big number, we sometimes can be a little bit overwhelmed by how we actually write this number. I like starting from the right. And I look at this number and I'm going to see that, well, if I'm dealing with numbers, my 2 zeros aren't going to be important. In fact, I'm going to rewrite this. I'm going to rewrite this number. Okay, so that's the number that we have. So I know it's money. Money needs to be 2 decimal places. So that's a good reminder for later on. So I'm immediately taking away my zeros. Because when I deal with amount of money, I'll say to you, I've got 100 Rand. I don't tell you I've got 100 Rand and 0 cents. So my 0 cents in this example are not really important. I then look at the number from this side and I count 3 numbers and I put a line up there or a dot. Now, no, those are my hundreds, that's my thousands. If my number was bigger, my next 3 would be my millions, billions, trillions, etc. So, starting from this side, I know that that is thousands. So I've got 900 and I don't think I'm going to write this all out, and 44,000. So I know those were thousands. Then I'll go to my next lot of 3 numbers, and those are my units. I've got 630. So 944,630 rand. Don't forget your units. In fact, while I'm discussing this, really, really important in your paper is always to add a unit. Maths Lit always has a context. In this case, we're dealing with money, so our unit will be rands. But whatever you're dealing with is usually a unit. I always say to my kids, it's 12 what? Could be 12 Smarties, 12 rand, 12 litres, 12 meters. They all mean different things. So it's important to remember that. Right, our next question is calculate the VAT amount for the sewer monthly charge on a stand larger than 2,000 meters squared. So, on my count, I'm looking for larger than 2,000 meters squared. So I can see here I've got up to and including 300 meters. It's not that. Larger than 300 but less than 1,000. Not that one. I'm crossing these off. I've got a pen. Not that one. Finally, I've got larger than 2,000 meters squared. So I'm looking at that last number. I'm going to write that number out. So it's 836,02. That is the amount, total charge in rand, excluding VAT. Now the question is, what did the question actually ask me? And this is another good tip for you. Do your calculations, calculate your answer, then go back and reread the question. It's a good tip. It's a good hint, because when you reread the question, you'll see, have I actually answered the question? So I'm going back to my question now, and it said calculate the VAT amount on the surcharge. It didn't ask me for what the surcharge was. So I need to take my answer here, and I actually need to work out what VAT is. Now, VAT is a percentage. It's 15%, and I've been told on the table. I keep doing that. Okay, take that away. Get my pen back. So it's 15%, and I just want to work out the percentage, so I'm going to times by 15%. Right, on my calculator, I'm going to take that amount, which is your 836,02 times 15%, and I get my answer. So that is 125 rand and 40 cents. Now, I actually wanted to write this out fully. That's what my calculator said. My calculator said it was 403. But remember I said to you earlier, money is 2 decimal places. So we need to round this off, and you're always going to round it correctly. So I'm going to write it as 125,40. If the answer was 4, I would have to add that 0 to make sure that money is 2 decimal places. Right, now I know that I've answered the question correctly. Move on to the next part. Write down the unit of measure that was used for the meter readings. So when we look at this part of the account, my meter readings is here. Okay, so that's my meter reading. It starts on 7,000. I'm actually going to rewrite this number. 7,905,000. And then it goes to 807,000. That's my start date and my end. That's my start and my end. So I'm reading this in thousands. I'm actually going to do the calculation and see what is the difference between these two. I'm going to take my 807,000 and minus my 795,000. And I'll tell you why in a moment. And that gives me 12,000. And the reason I did that is because in the next line it tells me there's 12 kiloliters. But I know that a kiloliter is 1,000 liters. Now my answer I got was 12,000. So I know that this must be liters. So my answer to that question is write the units of measure for that was used in the meter reading. That answer is liters. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Determine the monthly sewer charge A based on a stand of 563 meters squared. Now, I don't have this A here. I'm actually going to go back 2 seconds to show you where A was. A is there. That's the A I'm looking for. So that's the monthly sewer charge based on the stand size, and I'm going to be using that information, and that's what I've got in my question. Let's go back to our question. Right. So 563 meters squared. I need to find where it fits into this table. So it's up to and including 300 meters squared. That's not it. It is larger than 300 meters, it is, and up to 1,000. So this is where I'm fitting. I'm fitting in the second row. And so my answer is 378,95. That is in rands, excluding your VAT. Determine the amount of sewage based on the stand size, excluding VAT. They haven't asked for anything else. I've reread the question, so I know that I've actually given them the correct answer. Right. Use the stepped residential water tariff table to calculate the total amount of water usage. This is also excluding VAT. And now it's B. Very similar to the A that I just showed you. I'm not going to go back there now. I'm going to show you the stepped table. So this is the table that we have. Now, one of the things with water and the municipal account is it's not an easy account. And it works on a stepped tariff. So what it basically means is that the government is trying to encourage us, or the municipality are trying to encourage us to use less water. So if you use less water, you pay less. If you use more water, you pay more. But now it's not fair to say, well, I use a lot of water, so I'm going to pay more for all my water. Where you use a little bit of water, or vice versa, I use a little bit of water, you use a lot of water, it's kind of not fair. So what the government does is they actually charge you in steps. So all of us, for our first 6 kilolitres of water, pay the same amount. Then if somebody doesn't go further than that, they're paying less. Somebody goes higher, they pay more for the next step. So it works on the step. So I'm going to actually show you kind of like a graph. I'm going to do it like this. So for the first 6 kilolitres of water, I pay a certain amount, which is R8.28. Then for the next lot, so somebody who uses more water would actually have a graph like this. They would pay R8.28 for that part, the first 6 kilolitres, and then they would pay R8.79 for the next lot, which goes up to 10. So that's at the next price. Let's use a different colour. That's at a different price. And then if you use more than 10 kilolitres of water, you would then go to the next step, etc., etc. So they kind of encourage us to use less water. So let's see how we can do this calculation. We used 12 kilolitres of water. That's what the account used. So I'm going to go through this table, and I'm actually going to start at the bottom of the table. I'm going to say, where does 12 fit in this side of the table? So it is above 10 and below 15. And I want to know how many units is it above 10. So I'm going to take my 12 and I'm going to minus 10 kilolitres. And this rate is actually rands per kilolitre. So I see that that is 2. So that's 2 kilolitres. So I'm going to be paying, I'm going to do the calculations here, 2 kilolitres at this higher rate of 15 rand. Okay, now I've still got 10 kilolitres to pay for. So my 10 kilolitres to 6, and I go, well, how many kilolitres is that? So I can see from my 10 minus my 6 is 4 kilolitres. So 4 kilolitres are in my second thing there. So I'm paying 4 kilolitres at R8.79. And finally, my last 6 kilolitres, because that's what I have left, 6 kilolitres is going to be at R8.28. Now, for each of these, I'm going to do a calculation. I'm going to do 2 times 15. Okay, that was easy enough. That's 30 rand. 4 times R8.79. is 35 Rand 16. And then finally 6 times my 8 Rand 28. And that gives me 49 Rand 68. So the total that I'm paying, I'm going to add those all up. So plus 35.16. And I get a total of 114 Rand 84. So that's the total that I paid for that. Okay, I think it's time for a little bit of a break, and then we will come back and do another question.
Thank you, Haley. Guys, we are going to take a very short break, but don't go anywhere. Remember to follow us on all our social media platforms. All you need to do is search for Was Matrix and you'll find us. Send us through your questions, send us through your comments. Let us know how you're doing during this exam prep time, and we can help each other get through everything that we can possibly help you with. So we'll see you straight after the break, guys. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back from the break, guys. You are still hanging out with Looney, Haley, and Nicolene, and we're assisting you with your exam guide for Maths Lit. So remember, we've got that competition where 2 of you stand a chance to win 2 gigs of data. All you need to do is hashtag WozoWinner on Facebook, and all the details will be there on how you can win. So let's not waste any more time. Let's head straight back to Haley.
Thank you. Welcome back, guys. Now, when we were going through the beginning and I said to you question 3 is all about measurement, I know this is one that people don't particularly like historically over the time that this subject's been around. So I'm actually going to do a question with you from one of the past papers in the past on measurement. Right, so now some more tips that you need on measurement. When working with circles, it's important, I have a pen, it's important to remember that the diameter of a circle is double the radius. Okay? The perimeter of a circle is also called the circumference. And finally, practice working with increasing or decreasing measurements using your percentage, fraction, and ratio. Let's go through and do an actual example from one of our past papers. So we're going to be looking at the analysis of a window pane. While doing renovations, Tabiso decided to put 2 different types of windows into a wall. Then it gives you the pictures. I like to always look at the picture and see, do we actually understand what's in the picture? We've got small square window panes in a frame, and we've got larger rectangular window panes in a frame. So those are his 2 options of what he's given. Let's go see what the questions were about. The first question said, determine in centimeters. So they will give you in the question what they want. The length of the large window. So when we look at this window, we've got the width of 610 millimeters, the length of 890 millimeters, and this is just converting. So I would have drawn out my zeros, and my answer is, so it was 890 millimeters. And again, also from your ruler, we know there's 10, we're dividing by 10, so that's 89, and don't forget your units, centimeters, very important. Right, the next question, calculate the perimeter, and remember that's your outline of the shape of one small window pane. So there's my small window pane, and it tells me that there's a square window pane. So I'm actually going to redraw this, and I see that it is 18.5 centimeters for each side, which means that each side is 18.5. So I could have said, okay, I'm starting on the one side, I'm going to walk around, so it's 18.5 plus 18.5. But because they're all the same, I could have just said 18.5 times 4, they're all the same, and I would have got 74 centimeters. Single unit, it's a perimeter, so it's 1 dimension. Right. Tabiso decorates the window pane by gluing glass beads along the edge of each window pane. The radius of one glass bead is 1,85 centimeters. How many glass beads will fit along the length of the small window pane? So again, I'm going to draw my picture. So I've got my window pane, and I want to put glass beads along the length of my window. Okay, So I can see now that I'm going to take the length, so my length of my window is 18.5. And I'm going to see how many glass beads can fit into that. But what's really important to note, if I take this and enlarge it, I'm looking at that part of the circle. I'm actually going to draw that part of the circle. If I draw my circle, I want to know my circles that go next to each other. I'm looking here for the diameter of the circle. So, remember I said to you that the radius was half the diameter. So I'm going to take my radius, and I'm going to take my 1,85, and I'm going to times by 2 to get the diameter. And I get 3,7 centimeters. So now I want to know how many can fit into my length. So I'm going to divide that 18.5 by 3,75. Sorry, by 3,7, and I get 5 beads. Can you see how I haven't left the answer just as 5? I've actually given a context. They asked me how many beads. It's 5 beads. Right. And then we move on to another question which said, the total width of 2 small window panes equals 3/4 of the width of 1 large window pane. Calculate the width of the large window pane. Now, first of all, when you look at that question, it seems a little bit confusing. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a deep breath and think, I got this, I can do this, and I'm going to draw a picture. So, the total width of 2 small window panes. I want to show you in the next page, I've got the small window panes. So I'm going to take 2 small window panes, and I put them next to each other, okay? So this is 18.5 centimeters, and that's 18.5 centimeters. I'm going to start off and I'll say, well, what is the total of that? So if I add those 2 up, so I've got my 18.5, basically times 2, gives me 37 centimeters. So that's my length of the 2 window panes. I'm going to go back to the question. Okay. Equals 3/4 of the width of 1 large pane. So if I take my picture, okay, that equals 3/4. So my big pane, let's try a different color. Let's use my red. So my big pane, and I'm just going to do the length of my big pane, will be bigger because this is 3/4 of the big pane. So does that make sense? This is 3/4. Let me write that as a proper fraction. That's 3/4. So now I'm looking for a number that is bigger. So I'm going to say my 37 centimeters is actually 3/4 of the bigger one, of the bigger. Now, if I wanted to work this out, I'm going to take the 3 and I'm going to actually divide by 3/4. So take my 37 and I'm going to divide by 3/4, 3/4. That's going to give me my big on its own. So my 37 divided by 3/4, and I get an answer of 49,3 centimeters. I'm going to go back to the question. Back to the question. The total width of 2 small window panes equals 3/4 of the width of 1 large window pane. Calculate the width of the large window pane. So now we've answered the question and we have got the answer. Okay. So that takes us to the end of that question. All right, matrics, and finally, don't forget to read every question carefully. Read the question, do your calculations, and then reread the question. It's really important. Okay? Then remember, night before, go to bed early. Have I got a pen and colour? Go to bed early on the night before the exam. You need your rest. Okay? Eat an early lunch before your exam, or a good breakfast if you're writing in the morning. Make sure that your tummy is full. And finally, if you're feeling stressed and just seems so overwhelming and too much, Remember, you've got this, but there are plenty people that you can find to talk to. And I hope to see you again soon. I'm going to send you back to Lenny.
Matrix, that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you got a lot of tips and tricks to tackle your exams. Remember, guys, if you need to speak to people, if you're stressed out, reach out to someone so that you feel the support that you need going to your exam and you feel that you can succeed when you write your papers. Guys, all the winners will be announced on our Was a Matrix Facebook page, so do check that out, and a big congratulations to you. Remember to also check out our schedule on www.wasamatrix.co.za, and then you can see when all the other revision shows will be playing. But then from me, Looney, Hayley, and Nicolene, it's thank you and goodbye.